Okay, yeah, I'm just recording this screencast for on the topic of flipping and screencasting. I did a Google Hangout the other night, but there were a few technical glitches, so I've decided to record pretty much what I was presenting via the Hangout, but I'm going to record this screencast to replace that so people have access to something that's actually usable. Now, basically, with screencasting, often it's used to follow a flipped model, either fully flipped or a bit of a blended learning model. And basically, just a little bit of background. The traditional model, so here's a graphic here with a traditional and a flipped classroom model. So you can see here that what takes place with the traditional model in the lesson time, teacher instruction, student assimilation of instruction, student completes the activity to support the assimilation, and homework's done outside the lesson to consolidate that. Now, with the flipped model, as the name suggests, it sort of turns that on its head. So what you've got is, instead of the instruction happening within the classroom, the instruction's actually happening outside of the classroom, often via video screencasting. So you can see here what takes place prior to the lesson. Instructions delivered through homework, such as a screencast. Students assimilate that, so you might have a Google sheet that they fill out, or Google form with a quiz, or you might have something they have to write into their books, or use something like the Cornell note-taking system, which I'll show you later. So what we've got here is within the lesson time, because I've done the instruction beforehand via such things as screencast videos, then they complete an activity to support that. The teacher supports a consolidation. So, for example, they might do problem solving or questions that they used to do for homework within the classroom. Now, I've basically got a bit of a scenario here. Traditional classroom, all right, or a flipped classroom. Okay, you need to give them time to turn up, settle, 5 minutes, say. And then within a traditional classroom, you might spend 10 minutes, up to 10 minutes reviewing the homework, if there was any. And then, 15 to 25 actually, teaching, lecturing the content, and then 10 to 20 minutes of them doing other activities, learning. So it might be guided or independent learning, group work, things like that. Now, flipped classroom, okay, what you've got is you touch base with them about the video that they watched, if that's what you've used for the instruction. And then the rest of the time is for their guided, independent or cooperative learning. So you get a much larger chunk of time where you as a teacher can walk around the classroom and just help students out individually. Now, I myself, I haven't gone 100% flipped. I've done a little bit, and I'd like to get to a point where I'm doing it a lot more. I suppose the issue with flipping the classroom, you can use other people's videos. You can look for stuff that relates to your curriculum and put it on a learning management system or somewhere for the students to access. Of course, nothing beats you making the videos and you appearing in them. Something that I've done is when I have made screencasts and I've got the little picture-in-picture of or video-in-video of myself in the corner. the students really appreciate that it's actually their teacher that they're learning from. Now, there's lots of great screencasting videos out there, and I would say, you know, if you find something really good, use it. But eventually, I'd like to get to a point where most of the stuff's mine, and occasionally, you know, I'll use someone else's brilliant material. You know, a little bit like a guest lecture or something like that. Yeah, so this is just another graphic showing the difference between a traditional model and a flipped model. And, you know, following, say, a 90-minute period or a double period. And, yeah, so again, traditional, lots of lecture there within the classroom, whereas here, not much in the flipped model because most of it's done outside the classroom. Now, I'm just going to show a bit of a video.
As we go deeper into learning, can technology accelerate and deepen the quality of learning? And in fact, the answer is yes, although not automatically yes, and that's what we're sorting out. We have these 6 C's, they're called, that will be familiar to most people: critical thinking, communication, creativity, collaboration, character education, and citizenship. How does technology relate to those? I'm going to call those 6 the deep learning goals. And it turns out that if you purposely use technology, it can go a long way to accelerate it. So we have certain criteria. How does the learning become irresistibly engaging? Students want it, and teachers want it. How does it get used without getting too complicated technically? Is the second one. How do you use technology 24/7 so you're accessing the information purposefully all around the clock? And then also, how do you do work that's steeped in what we call real-life problem solving? The foundation for this, incidentally, is this dynamic relationship between push and pull. So push is the finding. I won't give you all the research, but it's very clear that as students move up the grades from kindergarten onward, they are increasingly bored almost everywhere. And so that's, and teachers are somewhat alienated because it's hard to teach the board. So that's the push factor. It's psychologically pushing people out. The pull factor is the tremendous digital world that's got all kinds of ever-increasing attraction, not all of which is productive, but it is a pull. And so what we're trying to do is say, first of all, this push-pull dynamic is going to cause an explosion. Something's got to give. So let's be there as part of the explosion and see how technology can increase the learning. Technology is now... What you see in these schools that are using technology in the service of learning is that they are really... students are working in groups with each other around their machines and accessing them, and the teacher is orchestrating. We call the teacher as change agent, the student as partner in learning. So you get advantage of learning from your fellow students, learning from the teacher. The teacher is orchestrating this and really making it come alive. And then on top of that, because of the accessibility 24/7, think of it this way. You spend 4 or 5 hours in the school doing this engaging learning, but then those students that are turned on, lots of them in this way, they start to do additional 3-4 hours after that. So all of a sudden you've got double the learning time at no extra cost. It's really quite powerful, obviously, just by definition. Take the flipped classroom. What it normally means is that the teacher, either with his or her own video, which is easy to do now by oneself, or use of other videos, had students purposefully review video in the after hours and do a lot of the learning that way. And then in the classroom, the time is taken up to discuss the meeting and to go deeper. So it's almost like flipping it, where the instruction looks like it's happening at night without the teacher, and that the discussion, which maybe would have been homework before, is the day. We call it teacher as change agent, teacher as activator. A teacher who can kind of identify the best possible things, figure out where individual students' interests are, begin to help them find their niche, leverage the learning, and to know whether or not the learning is occurring. As one of our experts said, a great teacher should be on any given day be able to give defensible evidence about what their students are doing and what their students are learning, what the aim is, and how far they're getting. So there's a lot in what we call the new pedagogy, but it has to be now sorted out, and then it's more complicated because in the new work, there's really a fundamental learning partnership, not only between a teacher and a student, but among students and among teachers. So it's more of a collectivity, it's more complicated, but that's where the power is.
So, yeah, Michael Fawn obviously mentioned the 6 C's. So here's a graphic of the 6 C's. And basically, if we have a look, I've put in a table here, so the 6 C's and the details. So 6 20th century skills that we really need to be teaching our students to be competent in. And obviously, you know, a flipped model, and as part of that, doing screencasts can help with a few of these. So certainly communication is one it can certainly tap into. So communicating effectively orally, writing, so listening. So obviously they've got to listen to the screencast. You know, you really should be getting them to write something down as they listen, or after they listen, to reflect. And also you can actually get the students to make their own screencasts. So this week I've got students who are doing presentations in class, but an alternative to that could be to get them to record a screencast, and then you know, that can be presented, whether it's to the class or just to the teacher. And yeah, so creativity and imagination certainly come into that, because you can certainly be quite creative with how you do screencasting, and yeah, it can bring these other elements in too, in various ways depending on how it's used. Now, basically with doing screencasts, there's various steps you have to do. So for step 1, students, you've made your video, so students watch it. All right, so it teaches basic concepts, might show sample problems like a Khan Academy type screencast, various applications for things. This is a screenshot of one that I made on static electricity, and I'll actually show the video, the screencast of that a little later. Step 2 is you get students to write something down. So here's a screenshot of a Cornell note-taking system. So the students watch the video, they write down the details as they're listening to it, and then after they've listened to it, they'll glean from that some key points, and then from that they'll just write a sentence or two summarising the main idea. So that way they're thinking it through 3 times, they're doing something slightly different to it. It helps them to remember and recall the content better. Obviously another thing you can get them to do after the video is reflect on it. So you can set up a Google form with a little questionnaire quiz, and that way it actually shows, it sends the teacher via a Google sheet that the students have actually done it. And so you can design it in such a way to make sure they've actually watched it, you know, with specific questions about what was in the video. So that's a good way to keep the students accountable. So yeah, I've just got a couple of things that I'm going to show you here. And these are actually some screencasts that I've done in the past. So I'm going to show you one I did with static electricity.
Hello. To begin this new topic of electricity, where we start with looking at the issue of static electricity. Now, as you can see in the picture here, there's a couple of girls touching this metal dome. Now, on that dome is charged particles, and what is happening is they are going into the girls because they're touching the dome, and it's making their hair stand on end. And that's because the dome is charged negative, and those negative charges are going into their hair and making their hair repel each other. Their arms stuck to his head. Now again, they've been charged, so they've been rubbed on something, maybe rubbed on the lounge or rubbed on his jumper, and they build up a charge, and so they can be stuck onto things like his head. So if you have a look at this, what we've got is a balloon. Now this balloon is neutral because it contains an equal amount of negative and positive charges. So they are on the balloon, but overall it's neutral. Now we've got a jumper here, and it's got lots of positive and negative charges as well. It could be neutral, it may not be. I'm not really going to count how many red pluses and blue negatives there are, but it could be neutral. Anyway, now if we then rub the balloon on the jumper, so we make contact of the balloon with the jumper, it takes the electrons from the jumper, and that is called charging by conduction. So conduction has contact, and then if we take the jumper away, if we take the balloon away, look what happens. The balloon is attracted to the jumper, and that's because opposites attract. So opposite charges attract. So because the balloon is negative and the
yeah, you can see in that video that I used the simulation from the FET website, University of Boulder, Colorado's FET website, and I found it a really good way to explain it. So you can do screencasting in imaginative ways, and what you might have noticed at the beginning of the video was I basically just set up a really just 3 pictures on a PowerPoint slide, and I used them to run through some of the concepts of static electricity. And the other thing that I did was I had their textbook open, a PDF copy of their textbook, so it's something they're familiar with, and I basically just used the pictures in the textbook to help explain how static electricity works right down to the atomic level.
Now, we looked at this in term 1, and you might remember that an atom is made of protons. In this diagram they're red, neutrons, which are green in this diagram, and electrons, which are blue. Now notice that protons are in the nucleus.
Yeah, so the software that I used to make that video was called Screencast-O-Matic, and I'll go into more detail about that later. But it's free software, and it's quite useful for considering it's free. You can subscribe to have more features. It's like about $15 a year, so it's pretty cheap. Now this other video here was a video that I made to show university students who were about to go out and be physics teachers and science teachers how to use screencasting. So I actually used Screencast-O-Matic to show them how to use Screencast-O-Matic.
Okay, yeah, I'm making a video for you guys just to show a little bit about how to do a flipped classroom and do screencasting as part of that. I'll show you a little bit on how to use Screencast-O-Matic. That's not the one I normally use. Teach the content. They've looked at the content. They've created an account. So you go to the Screencast-O-Matic website. You create an account. You need a microphone or a headset. I'm not using a headset for this. I've got a webcam attached to my laptop. Of course, laptops have webcams built in and microphones, so you can just use that, just that I wanted to use a better quality one.
So yeah, on that, I'm going to show you a couple of slides in a minute where you know, some microphones and webcams that you can purchase that do a better job than what's built in. Having said that, you know, if you can't afford it or for whatever reason, don't let that stop you. If you've got a laptop, it's got a webcam microphone built in, use that. But yeah, I would recommend eventually upgrading, especially if you do a lot of screencasting. So why flick the classroom? Well, there's some points here. Can be used, class time can be used for higher level activities because you've done the lecturing type content outside the classroom. So that helps students get help when they need it before they get frustrated. And yeah, it helps them be more successful because they're getting more help from the teacher. Now, here's some hardware to use. So what we've got is, this is actually what I'm using right now, the Logitech HT Pro C920 I've got. Excellent webcam. I think it cost me about 180 Australian dollars, so it wasn't overly expensive. You know, not cheap, but not overly expensive. It gives you good quality images, video, and it's also got a stereo microphone, so it's pretty good quality sound as well. Now, the other options, I don't have a microphone like this yet. I'd like to get one. These are a couple of really good alternatives. And so if you're doing a lot of, you know, podcasting as well, and also screencasting, then I think these would be a good way to go. I'm leaning towards the iRig Mic HD because you can easily plug it into your iPad with the Lightning input. You can get an adapter for the Blue Yeti, but yeah, pretty much it comes in the box, the iRig in the box with the capability of plugging it into your iPad. And yeah, but you can also plug it into your computer as well via a USB port and just have a stand for it to use. So they're a good option too. And yeah, as I've said here, they're good for using with Skype, Google Hangouts, Videocast, things like that. So in terms of screencasting best practice, close all non-essential applications because you don't want to be using up, you know, your computer's memory and all that, and then having issues because your computer can't cope with it. Write a script before you start recording, rehearse it, and then post it up. You know, good idea. I think I've put later on, but post it up on the wall behind your computer. That way, you're still looking forward. You're not looking down. You're not shuffling papers. I think that's good. And choosing a quiet area, plain background, good lighting is important as well. Yeah, so here's the point of taping the script to the wall. You know, make sure you're positioned well. You don't want to cut half of your head off. So make sure you're positioned well in the video screen. And yeah, be familiar with the software. Resize where it's recording. So I'm not recording the whole screen of my computer. I'm recording. I've actually got this PowerPoint in preview mode, so it's not actually in presentation mode. What's good about that is you can see the little previews to the left, and so you can see what's coming up, and yeah, that way you know, you sort of got an idea of where you're going, which I think is helpful. Yeah, I found that students really appreciate the screencast. I mentioned that earlier. A few points there. The students can pause, rewind. So, you know, obviously, if you're giving a talk in class, they might not, you know, be confident enough to ask a question, but if they're watching at home, they can actually pause, stop, rewind, replay, and that can help them a lot. They can review the material later on for tests if they're away from school, sick, or on a sporting event, or away on an excursion. They don't miss out. They can look it up later. And so, yeah, all of that is excellent. Some pedagogical benefits. Yes, they provide students with student-centered, engaging mode of learning. Obviously, that depends how it's done. They can be multimedia, so music, sound, audio, graphics, anytime, anywhere learning. I've already mentioned pausing, rewinding, so own pace learning, and chunking information, so getting them to reflect, fill out a Google form. And a good idea is to embed the Google form directly below the video so they can see the two at the same time, is a good way to go. Now, obviously, yeah, there's no one fixed solution for anything. So, you know, there can be issues. So here, what if the students don't watch the videos? What then? Well, as I mentioned earlier, it's important to have evidence for learning. So get them to take notes, get them to fill out a Google form quiz, and then give students the option of catching up on the videos in class, but the consequence is they miss out on the other activities. So that might work for some teachers, other teachers might not be happy with that. So you've got to work out how you manage that and what the consequences are if they don't do their homework, which may be watching the screencast. So yeah, as a teacher, you need to work out what you're happy with and how you want that to work. Now, Screencast-O-Matic itself. So obviously you create an account. So you go to you Google Screencast-O-Matic, go to the website, create an account. Now you can either run Screencast-O-Matic via the browser, or you can download it and install it. Obviously, there's an advantage to downloading it. You don't need the internet to run it. And I run it from the installed version. Obviously, you need a microphone or a headset and a webcam if you want to record your picture-in-picture or video of you presenting it. So here's a little screenshot of me using Screencast-O-Matic software. There's various options. So yeah, you select, you know, whether you want to just do a screen without the webcam, or just the webcam, or both. I tend to do both. The maximum time for the free version is 15 minutes, but that's good because you shouldn't even go that long with a student screencast anyway. I try to go no longer than 10 minutes and even a bit shorter if I can. And you can choose the size. So it can be whole screen, preset size, or you can select the size you want by dragging this box, this black and white dotted box, to the exact size you want. So I tend to drag it to the size of my PowerPoint preview. So you can see here that yeah, I'm using PowerPoint, but it's in preview mode. So I can see off screen, so you can't see this, but I can actually see the slides that are coming up, which I find that really useful, and I mentioned that earlier. Yeah, so there's lots of options. If you use the free version, you can save it to your computer, you can upload it to Screencast-O-Matic with your link it to your account, or you can upload it to YouTube. If you get the paid version, you've got these other options. All right. Yeah, so the thing about Screencast-O-Matic, it'll work on a PC. I don't believe it'll work on a Mac. So that's just the issue with Screencast-O-Matic. There is other software around. So other free software I've got listed here, and these three work with both PCs and Macs. And yeah, I'm not going to read through it, but you can see it there. And there's other paid software. I use Camtasia Studio as well. It's an excellent software. As you can see, it's not cheap, but it is fantastic. has all the bells and whistles that you could ever want. Most people probably wouldn't use a tenth of the stuff they have in that software. And that's what I find, Screencast-O-Matic's good for just recording a screencast, and then that's it. You don't mess around too much with editing, because the thing with editing is it takes time. So if you can prepare a script ahead of time, you don't have to, pause out, take out bits that, you ummed and ahed too much or whatever. And I'm on and ahhing right now. Anyway, final considerations. So obviously, flipping the classroom. Bergman and Sams have a book about flipping the class. They've really pioneered a lot of this stuff. Recommendations: work with someone, link up with someone. So hopefully that might be someone you literally work with in your school, but if it's not, you can always work with someone online. So see if you can get support from administrators, from IT, where to store the videos. It does take time. Do you need to spend hours editing your video? If you're a teacher, you probably don't have that time. So it doesn't have to be perfect. I think you're better off doing videos that aren't perfect than doing no videos at all. And make sure you tailor it to your students. These are just this is the reference from Bergman and Sams. It's not their book, but it's an article that they've written. It's quite a good article. I would recommend you looking that up. You can find it online. And also this outline by Ruffini about screencasting to engage learners. Again, you can find that article online. And that's, that brings me to the end of my screencasting presentation. Thank you. Bye.